Before we begin, I want to warn you that this story contains mature themes. It deals with the challenges of new motherhood, family relationships, and infidelity. If these topics make you uncomfortable, you might want to stop watching. Now, my name is Bray Schuffer, and I'm 42 years old. If you were to look at my life now, you might call it unconventional, but I've learned to accept it for what it is. If you had told me even just 10 years ago that my life would unfold this way, I probably would have laughed and dismissed it as some kind of joke. I would never have believed you. Yet, here I am, sitting at my kitchen table on a quiet morning, my thoughts drifting as I stare at a half-empty cup of coffee. I'm trying to piece together the events of the last decade, searching for meaning in everything that has happened. But it's hard to grasp at it all. For the past 8 years, it's been just me and my son, Maximus. Ever since the divorce, we've been navigating life as a duo as thought the whole world was acted against. Us remember when it all began, when his father walked out Maximus wisely, 10 years old at the time. He didn't shed a tear in front of me. He never does. But I could see it in the subtle way she'd carry himself. I could see it in the quiet longing, gaze he would cast out the window as if he was waiting for his dad to come back, even though he probably knew deep down that it wasn't going to happen every day. He'd wait, and every day. I had to watch the disappointment slowly settle on his face when his father didn't return. I made a promise to myself, the day his father left. I swore, right then and there, that I would do whatever it took to make sure Maximus never felt alone. I would be the one constant in his life, and I would make sure he felt the warmth and security of a family. Even if it was just the two of us, that promise has been the foundation of everything I've done since then, the thing that keeps me going. Even on the darkest days, it hasn't always been easy. But I've tried to create a sense of stability, or him to give him the love and support he needs. No matter what the world throws at us. For a long time, I honestly believed I was managing to keep things together. Maximus was such a sweet kid, so quiet. Always looking for ways to help me around the house. There was something gentle about him, something that made him stand out even among other children. But as he grew older, things started to shift. He started to change in ways I couldn't fully grasp. And if I'm being completely honest, I could see myself changing too. Maximus turned 18 this year, which in many ways felt like a big milestone for both of us. He's not a child anymore. And yet sometimes, if in myself thinking that he's still on the edge of figuring out what it means to truly be a man, the transition isn't always clear, and I can see that he's struggling with it. He's always been a little reserved. Even as a child, he never had that need to constantly be around. Other kids never sought out the loud cow, addict interactions that most of his peers did. He doesn't go out much, preferring the quiet of home. He doesn't really have close friends, not in the way that you might expect a young man to. I've tried talking to him about it, try to understand if there was something wrong, if he was feeling lonely or lost, but every time I bring it up, he just shrugs it off, dismissing my concerns. With a casual, "I'm fine, but I know him better than he thinks." I know he's not fine. A mother knows these things, even when her child tries to convince Hero otherwise. About a month ago, Maximus came at me with something I never could have anticipated, something I wasn't at all prepared to hear. It was late in the evening, just the two of us in the living room, when he suddenly opened up in a way I hadn't seen before. He told me that he'd been using my things, my underwear. First, I was completely confused. I didn't understand what he meant. My mind couldn't make sense of it. And when it hit me, when I finally understood the full weight of what he was trying to say, felt as though the earth beneath me had just disappeared. My heart raced. My breath caught in my chest. I wanted to shout, to demand to know what on earth had been going through his mind, what made him think that was okay. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, frozen in place, watching him. He looked so small in That moment, so ashamed, so deeply. Embarrassed, his eyes were cast downward, avoiding mine. His posture hunched in a way that made me ache for him. The boy who had once been so eager to help, so full of quiet. Kindness was now sitting there, burdened by something I couldn't fully comprehend. And in that instant, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about what he had done. It wasn't about the actions themselves. The shocker, the anger I might have felt it, was about something deeper, something he had never been able to articulate, something he was feeling, something he couldn't bring himself to say out loud. This was about his struggle, his confusion, his loneliness, and his fear. And somehow all I could do was sit there with him, trying to understand not just the facts of what happened, but the quiet, painful emotion she was carrying, that he hadn't yet learned how to express. He wasn't some pervert or some monster. He was my son, and he was struggling with feelings he didn't understand, with urge. She couldn't control, I couldn't bring myself to make him feel worse than he already did. So he made a choice. I made a deal with him. I told him he could do what he needed to do, but there would be rules he could relieve himself. But he had to do it in front of me. That way, I could make sure he was safe, that he wasn't crossing any more lines. In exchange, I told him, I'd bring whoever I wanted into the house without him questioning or judging me. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the only one I could think of in the moment since. Then things have been different. Maximus seems more relaxed now, less on edge. Hessel doesn't talk much, but he doesn't avoid me like he used to. And me. Well, I've started to realize that this arrangement isn't just for him, it's for May too. It gives me the freedom I've been craving for years. The freedom to live my life without feeling like I have toe-tip-toe around him. Sometimes late at night, I sit up and wonder if I made the right choice. I wonder what people would think if they knew. Would they call me a bad mother? A failure? Maybe they would, but they don't know Maximus. They don't know what it's like to see your child hurting and not know how to fix it. They don't know what it's like to feel like you're barely holding everything together, just trying to keep from falling apart. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if this arrangement will work long term, or if it's just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off, but for now, this is our life. This is what we've chosen. And as messy and complicated as it is, I'm doing the best I can for him, for both of us. If you're still with me, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories like this. Trust me, there's so much more to uncover. The deal wasn't something he planned. It wasn't something I thought through. It just happened. One moment I was sitting there trying to figure out how to talk to Maximus about what he told me, and the next the words were spilling out of my mouth like they had a mind of their own. "You can keep doing it," I said. "But I need some things in return." He looked at me like I'd just spoken in another language. His face went pale. His hands clenched into fists on the kitchen table for a second. I thought he was going to get up and walk out. Maybe I wanted him to. Maybe I was hoping he'd say no, that he'd tell me I was crazy and storm out of the room. But he didn't. He just sat there staring at me, his mouth opening and closing like he didn't know what to say. "What do you mean?" he finally asked, his voice shaky, quiet, like he wasn't sure if he really wanted to know the answer. I took a deep breath. "I mean, you can keep doing it, but only in front of me. And in return, I get to live my life the way I want. I get to bring people into the house without you saying anything about it. No judgment, no questions. We both get what we need." Okay. There was a long silence after that. Maximus didn't say a word. He just stared at me. His brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line. I could tell he was trying to process what I just said, trying to make sense of it. I was doing the same thing. The words were out there, now hanging in the air between this, and I couldn't take them back. not that I was sure I wanted to. Finally, he nodded. Just a little barely. Enough to notice. "Okay," he said, his voice so soft. "I almost didn't hear it if that's what you want." And that was it. That was the deal. The first time it happened, thought I was going to throw up. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart pounding in my chest, my palm sweating. I told myself this was what he needed, that it was better than the alternative that I was doing this for him. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't that simple. It never is. Maximus walked into the room, his eyes glued to the floor. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. We didn't. Look at each other neutrally. Just sat there pretending like it wasn't happening. Like this was just another normal day, and when it was over, he left. Without a word, I didn't move for a long time. After that, I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself that everything was fine, that this was fine. It's strange. The things you can get used to at first every time felt like a punch to the gut. But over time it got easier. Or maybe I just got better at pretending it didn't bother me. I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone, that it was just different. I told myself I was being practical, that I was making the best out of a bad situation. And for a while I believed it. Maximus, on the other hand, was a different story. Hatred to act like everything was fine. But I could see it in his eyes. The shame, the guilt. He never said it out loud. But I knew he hated himself for needing this, for needing me. And every time I saw that look on his face, it broke my heart. A little more. But what was I supposed to do? He was my son. My only child. I couldn't turn my back on him. I couldn't let him drown in his own feelings while I stood by and watched. So I did what I always do. I put on a brave face and pushed forward. For him, for Mephiris. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Most days I'm not even sure what the right thing is anymore. But this is where we are. The life we've built. And for now it's enough. It has to be. At first, it wasn't so different. Maximus stuck to the routine, if you could even call it that, once in the morning. Sometimes again in the evening. It wasn't predictable, but it was manageable. I told myself this was just a phase, that he'd get tired of it, that it would taper off once. The novelty wore off. But I was wrong. Instead of slowing down, it only picked up slowly at first. A morning turned into an afternoon, and then into a night. Then 2 mornings back to back. I started noticing how, quickly, the hours in the day began to revolve. Around this arrangement, there were fewer stretches of normality, fewer moments when the air in the house didn't feel heavy with what we'd agreed to. I tried to ignore it, to push it to the back of my mind. But it was always there, lingering like a shadow. So first time I felt uneasy about it, I was in the middle of folding laundry. Maximus walked in without saying a word. His expression tense, his body language stiff. I knew what he wanted before he even said anything. I put the clothes down and sat in the edge of the couch, waiting for him to finish. But something was different this time. He didn't just leave when it was over. He lingered, looking at me like he was trying to say something but couldn't find the words. I felt my stomach teen. The weight of the moment, pressing down on me like a stone. "You okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He nodded, but I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't about relief. Anymore, it was something more. That night I couldn't sleep. Stared at the ceiling, replaying the day over and over in my mind. I told myself not to overthink, that I was imagining things. But deep down I knew better. This wasn't just a way for him to cope. Anymore, it was something he was starting to need. something he was beginning to rely on. The scariest part was I wasn't sure how to stop it in the days that followed. Maximus's behavior shifted even more. He stopped trying to hide it, stopped waiting for the right moments. It was like he didn't care about boundaries anymore. Like the deal we'd made was a free pass to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And maybe it was. I had given him the freedom to do this. Hadn't I the first time I teased him? It was an accident. I was in the kitchen, making dinner. When he walked in, I could feel him watching me, as I moved around his eyes, following my every step. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to. Break the tension, or maybe I was testing him, seeing how far he'd go. But without thinking, I slipped my jacket off, letting it fall onto the counter. His breath hitched and I turned to face him, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. "Something wrong?" I asked, pretending not to. Notice the way his cheeks flushed. He didn't answer. He just turned and left the room. But I could feel the weight of his gaze lingering even after he was gone. After that, it became a game. I'd pull my hair up, let my shirt ride up, just a little too high, leave my jeans unbuttoned a little too long. Nothing explained it. Nothing. Overt just enough to make him squirm, to make him hesitate, before turning away. It gave me a strange sense of control, a power I hadn't felt in years, and I hated how much I liked it. But with every passing day, the line between us blurred a little more. He started seeking me out. More often, finding excuses to be near me even when he didn't need to be, and I him. I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything. But the truth was, I wasn't sure what it meant anymore. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. There was a moment late one evening when it all came to a head. Maximus was sitting across from me in the living room, his eyes fixed on me as I read a book. There was thick with unspoken tension, the kind that made your skin prickle and your heart race. I looked up at him, meeting his gaze, and for the first time, I didn't look away. Neither did he. Thessalon stretched between us, heavy and suffocating, until I finally cleared my throat and stood up. "I'm going to bed," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Henid." But I could feel his eyes on me. I walked away. I don't know how we go there. I don't know how I let it get this far. But here we are, caught in a cycle. I'm not sure how to break, and as much as I want to believe I'm still in control, I can't shake the feeling that I've already lost. It wasn't until Enrique Franklin entered our lives that everything began to unravel. I met him through a friend. One of those casual introductions that you never think much about at first, but Enrique wasn't the kind of man you could easily forget. He was charming in a way that felt effortless, like he didn't have to try to make you smile. He had this laugh that filled a room warm and disarming, and he made me feel lighter, like maybe for the first time in years I could let my guard down. Enrique started coming over more often. At first it was just for dinner, or a drink on the back porch. But soon he was staying later, lingering in the living room after Maximus had retreated to his room. And then one night he didn't leave it. I didn't try to hide it from Maximus. That wasn't part of our deal after all. Still, I couldn't ignore the look on his face the next morning, when he saw Henry sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like he'd been there for years. It was subtle, but I knew my son well enough to recognize the tension in his jaw, the way his hands tightened around his plate, just a little too hard. At first, Maximus didn't say anything. He just watched from the edge, squad and sullen. But as the weeks went by, and Enrique's presence in our house became more frequent, his silence turned into something sharper. He started snapping at me over little things, forgotten errands, mismatched socks, trivial annoyances that seemed to take in a life of their own. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just his way of adjusting. But the truth was, I could feel the resentment growing between us, thick and heavy, like a storm waiting to break one evening. As Enrique and I sat in the couch laughing over something silly, Maximus walked into the room. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there watching us with an expression I couldn't quite place. When I looked up and met his eyes, I saw it. The hurt, the anger, the confusion that had been bubbling beneath the surface for weeks before. I could say anything he spoke. His voice was low and trembling. "Do you even care anymore?" He said, his words cutting through the air like a knife. Enrique looked at me startled, but I didn't take my eyes off. "Maximus, what are you talking about?" I asked, my voice steady even though my heart was racing. He took a step closer, his fists clenched at his sides. "You don't care about me, about us, about what we're doing has done to me." The room went silent, even Enrique didn't dare to move. I stood up slowly, my chest tight, as I searched Maximus's face for some kind of explanation. "Maximus, that's not true," I said softly. "Of course I care about you for me." He shot back, his voice rising. "Howie's any of this for me. You let this guy waltz into our lives like it's nothing. You sit there and laugh with him like I don't even exist." I felt the air leave my lungs, his words hitting me harder than I expected. "Maximus," I said, reaching out to him, but he pulled away before I could touch him. "I didn't know you felt this way," I said. "Of course you didn't," he said bitterly. "You're too busy with your freedom or whatever it is you think this is. Do you even see me anymore? Or am I just convenient?" The silence that followed was deafening. Enrique shifted uncomfortably, on the couch muttering something about giving. Space before slipping out the door, I barely noticed all I could see was my son standing there, trembling with emotions I'd ignored for far too long that night. After Maximus stormed off to his room, he sat alone in the living room staring at the empty coffee cup Enrique had left behind. His words kept replaying in my head over and over, each one cutting a little deeper than the last. He was right. I hadn't been thinking about him. No, really. I'd been so focused on trying to make this situation work, on convincing myself that everything was fine, that I hadn't stopped to think about what it was doing to him, and for the first time. In a long time, I felt the full weight of my choices. The deal I'd made with Maximus, the boundaries we'd crossed, the lines we'd blurred. It wasn't just about us anymore. It was about what we were becoming and the damage we were leaving in our wake. I didn't sleep that night, just sat there, staring at the door, wondering if there was still a way to fix this, or if it was already too late the day after. Our argument. The house was unnervingly quiet. Maximus stayed in his room, the door closed and the air heavy within, spoke in tension. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my coffee, the steam curling up like a fog, clouding my thoughts. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to do something. Whatever. This was whatever. We had turned our relationship into, it couldn't go on like this. Not for him, not for me. Later that afternoon, I knocked on his door. There was no answer. At first, but I waited, pressing my forehead against the wooden frame. "Maximus, please, I need to talk to you," Isigid softly. Finally, the door creaked open, and he stood there, his face guarded, and his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling, "for everything. For not seeing how much this has hurt you, for letting things get this far. I was wrong." His expression didn't soften immediately, but he stepped aside to let me in. I sat on the edge of his bed, while he leaned against the wall, arms crossed over, his chest. "We need help," I admitted. "Both of us. I can't keep pretending ending, like I know what I'm doing, and I can't let us keep going down this path. I've already made too many mistakes, but I want to try to fix them, if you'll let me." Maximus didn't say much at first, he just nodded his, gaze fixed on the floor a few days later. We were sitting in a small office across from Rafael Cabrera, a family therapist I'd found online. Rafael was a kind man, his demeanor calm and steady in a way that made you feel safe, even when you didn't want to talk. At first, neither of us did. We sat in silence, the weight of our story, too much to put into words. But Raphael had a way of breaking through. That silence, asking questions that didn't feel like prying, but like invitations, slowly. Maximus began to open up. He talked about the loneliness he'd felt since the divorce, the confusion he carried about our arrangement, and their sentiment that had been building inside him. I listened, tears streaming down my face as I heard him put words to feelings I'd ignored. For far too long in the weeks that followed, therapy became a part of our routine. It wasn't easy. There were days when we left the office more drained than when we arrived. Days when it questioned if we were really making progress. But bit by bit, the walls between us began to come down. Raphael helped us set boundaries, real boundaries. This time, I told Maximus that our deal was over, that it had been a mistake, and that we needed to start fresh. At first, he struggled to adjust. There were moments when I caught him, retreating to old habits, his frustration boiling over into anger or tears. But with Raphael's guidance, we found healthier ways to cope. Maximus started journaling, something Aniver thought he'd try, and even joined a local martial arts class, where he found an outlet for his emotions. Slowly, I saw him change. He stood a little taller, spoke a little more confidently, and began spending more time out of the house building connections that weren't tethered to me. For me, the hardest part was facing myself. Really facing myself. Therapy forced me to confront the choices I'd made, the ways I'd let my own fears and insecurities dictate my relationship with Maximus. I'd spent so much time trying to hold on to him, to fill the void left by the divorce, that I hadn't seen how it was suffocating us, both letting go of that control. Learning to trust that he could stand on his own was one of the hardest things I've ever done. One evening, months after our first therapy session, Maximus and I were sitting on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon. He looked over at me and said, "Thanks, Mom, for everything." It wasn't much, but it was enough. He reached over and squeezed his hand, the kind of simple gesture that spoke volumes without needing words. We're still figuring things out. Healing isn't a straight line. It's messy and complicated and full of setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful Maximus is finding his way, and so am I. And while we may never fully erase the mistakes we've made, we're learning how to move forward together. Life doesn't come with a manual, and if it did, it probably would have thrown mine out a long time ago. Maximus and I've been through more than I ever imagined we could handle. But somehow we're still here, still trying. Still learning. The house feels different. Now like lighter. Maybe there's a kind of peace that comes from knowing we're finally working towards something better. Maxime has found his footing. He spends more time out with friends, more time, focusing on his own interests. And when we do cross paths, it feels like we're meeting as individuals, not as two people tied up in a messy arrangement. We didn't fully understand. We still have our moments. Of course, healing isn't perfect, but it's progressed for me. It's been a journey of facing myself. I've had to learn to forgive my own mistakes, to let go of the guilt that weighed me down for so long. I've had to accept that I can't always fix things. And sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to step back and let them figure it out for themselves. It hasn't been easy, but I'm proud of the progress we've made, not just as a mother and son, but as two people, learning how to respect and trust each other. Again, if there's one thing I've taken away from all of this, it's the importance of boundaries. Real one is they're not just rules, they're acts of love. Love for the people around you and love for yourself. They're how you protect what matters, while still allowing room for growth, for understanding, for connection. I've learned that accountability is just as important as forgiveness, that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is admit you've been wrong, but it's also the most freeing to anyone listening. I want to say this: mistakes don't define you. What defines you is what you do, after how you pick yourself up, how you face the people you've hurt, and how you move forward. Growth isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to change even when it scares you, even when it hurts. Maximus and I are still figuring things out, and I think we always will be. That's just life. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on solid ground. We're building something better, something healthier. And I know we'll keep moving forward together, either way. I want to hear what you think. Tell me, what would you do if your world fell apart like mine? How would you move forward? Let me know in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.